Good afternoon and welcome back to MarTech 21. I'm Mark Stephen. If you're just joining us for the first time today, then doubly welcome. This session is going to be looking at the future of the marketing function, the rise of AI, and key trends for 2021. So there's quite a lot of ground to cover there. We've got three speakers in this first section. So Megan Lujan is Director and Brand Strategist for Toshiba. And what she wants to talk about is how digital disruption is changing the future of marketing. So Megan, over to you.
Thanks so much. And I do appreciate all of your time and welcoming in to MarTech 2021. We have made it, but perhaps in a very different form. And that's what today is all about. I want to talk with you guys briefly about how digital disruption is changing the future of marketing forever. And as digital leaders now that we are, we've got to figure out a way to manage that. So our agenda is quite tight. I'm going to be bringing you guys through a very brief introduction. We will talk about digital disruption and the obsolete practices that come along with that disruption, what you can do to optimize for success, and ultimately support the business, because I want you to walk away with some clear tangibles here. And then most importantly, as leaders in this space, it is our job to think forward. So we need to future-proof our strategies and really figure out how we can support that business growth curve. After that, we'll go ahead and jump in a couple key takeaways. So to begin with, I'd like to go ahead and jump directly into the introduction. Now, as you guys may have heard in the bio, my name is Megan Lujan, and I do work in corporate America. I work for Toshiba, and I get to tinker in my day job. I'm responsible for our software and solutions portfolio, as well as our alliance and go-to-market strategy. Now, you would think that I have the pedigree or the privilege to have this particular role, but the truth is I do not. And there's a little bit behind the scenes that I'd like to share with you, because more importantly, aside from the technology messaging, this world needs hope and it needs inspiration. And I hope that you will find a little bit of inspiration in my messaging today. The first thing I want to just be truthful with you on is that I didn't get to where I'm at by being successful. I got to where I'm at because of my failures and being able to see things very, very differently. Now, there is a common stigma in this world of technology for women, and I wanted to just break and shatter that. So the first thing I'll share with you is my career path, how I got to where I'm at, and what really makes me qualified to be able to talk about the things that we're talking about today. Now, I started off as one very, very curious sales rep. I wanted to understand where the documentation was coming and where it was going. And when I closed a deal, I was not satisfied. I needed to figure out what the customer was going to do to make that project successful for them. So I turned into a project manager. The real story is I sold myself too deep into a deal, and in order to pull the deal off, I needed to be able to jump into a project manager role. So that was my first step in pinch hitting, as we call it here in the US, a team player who can move to all different roles in the business. From there, I was incredibly curious around channel management and go-to-market strategy and distribution. So I actually signed up as a partner of a tech company, and I was an entrepreneur. I went out there and I developed tech, and I figured out how to scale a business internationally. I traveled to Europe and all over launching products to Toshiba, my now employer, my then customer. And I then was pulled into Toshiba as an entrepreneur. They liked the skill sets that I did, that I had, and I had been out there talking on the road with them for many, many years in technology conferences. And every time I saw their C staff, they wanted to know when I was going to be making the decision to come to Toshiba. About 8 years ago, I made that decision, and I've been responsible for growing our solutions and services portfolio in this very, very amplified digital environment that we are in. But you see, my path wasn't always like that. I started off earlier today talking a little bit about my failures, but I want to break that down really briefly for you. You see, I'm a former foster youth. I didn't go to college. In fact, I didn't even go to high school. I did 2 months of high school here in our 9th grade, and I ended up as a runaway on my own, supporting my little brother out of the foster care and state system. I went to California during one of my foster visits, and I met my grandparents. And when I was there, I went to a mall. It's called South Coast Plaza here in Orange County. And I went into a place called Rainforest Cafe. sitting there, it was the first time I fell in love with marketing. And I understood, well, at the time, what an immersive experience was. This particular restaurant, it's just like a Disney theme experience. You've got the lights and the sounds. It's almost like a grocery aisle now where the storms turn on and the mist comes out. And I was enamored. I was enamored by all the senses and the light. And I remember so clearly, with no hope in my soul as a young foster youth, looking straight up and out into the mall, I saw business women. I saw women with confidence, people who knew where they were going and what they needed to do when they got there. And for the first time in my life, I had vision. You see, that moment, it created this blue flame so deep inside of my soul that I knew that I could actually become her. So I truly believe this: if you can see her, you can be her. And that is why I'm here today, because, about a year and a half ago now, they listed me on the cover as a woman influencer. And I myself had this massive imposter syndrome. Sure, I was at Toshiba, flanked by a Fortune 500 company and an amazing logo. And I know my business inside and out with pure confidence and conviction. But now I had to represent something bigger than that brand. And I had to go out there as a thought leader and as an influencer, as they call us, and go out and try to do something more meaningful. I struggled with that because I've never told my personal stories about how I got to where I'm at, because quite frankly, it doesn't fit on a resume. And it most importantly does not fit as a part of being a woman in technology. So that just kind of leads us up to the next part, which is really what I truly believe in, because I will tell you purely deep inside of my soul, the definition of who you are on paper right now in this very moment does not determine your path forward. You can be anything that you set out to be. And I want you to look at me as your beacon of hope to realize that if you know who you are, if you know what you want and what you need to do to work for it, you can be anything that you want. And I want you to see my struggles and my failures to get to where I'm at as your proof point to success. So with that said, I'm going to navigate a little bit away from who I am and what put me in this chair to talk with you today. And I want to talk about digital disruption and how that has changed. Now, I have to confess, I am a millennial business woman. So the truth is, I'm natively just enamored by technology. If you give me software, I will destroy it, learn how to work it, be in every single menu function, and start tinkering as quickly as I can because I love it. It's my passion. Well, the truth is, COVID changed everything for us. The way that we do business has forever been disrupted. Keeping in mind, I work for Toshiba, the business organization, and we help people print documents. We're in a bit of a future-proofing evolution for ourselves, and my team is front and center in the process of that. But quite frankly, we had to embrace new tactics overnight. Everything from our audience profiles to our positioning strategies to our portfolio architecture. It no longer solved the problems of our customers today in what they're feeling in terms of the COVID impact in business continuity. So the truth is, hybrid work is here to stay. And as a business model, we had to change that. And this is probably one big takeaway that I want you guys to leave here with. Hybrid work will not go away. And regardless of your business model and where you want to go in the future, you need to know your customers are going to be a blend of hybrid. So think through this positioning strategy. In the world of corporate America, I have some folks that are going to be in the combination of in the office, but also remote. So think of my executive staff. They're going in and out of their executive suites and having their meetings in a more isolated environment. There are some folks who are our shell staff in terms of operations and support. They're always going to be in the office. And then you have people like my staff who's been completely remote since March. The truth is, if we are selling and supporting business, we have to be prepared with the business model of a hybrid approach, both internally and also externally. So I want you guys to shape that in this, let's remove the concept of new normal. We're here, and that's what hybrid work is all about. Now, the truth is, on the business side, we got hit with a massive impact with COVID. The expanded use of digital documents. I don't know about you guys, but go ahead and think to yourself, did you get access to a new Google Drive, a Dropbox, new permissions to different systems. I mean, overnight, we had digital documents coming at us in this decade of toxic misinformation in ways you never thought possible. Now, shower on the new technology that we all had to use, the security and the compliance and the economic uncertainty, and we have set our business up for quite a bit of a ripple effect. Quite literally, how do we navigate as business professionals? Business itself will never be the same. I'm personally very disappointed I didn't get to meet you guys in person, because that is honestly the favorite part for me as a technology speaker. But how and where we meet, it's different. How we receive data has changed forever. How we process data has changed forever, and whether or not we're actually the ones processing it versus AI and other technology. And then more importantly, how we collaborate. I've got cloud systems and tools, and I manage my team accordingly, and there's a lot less back and forth like there would be in an office environment, and we've gotten through it. And I want to talk a little bit and segue into obsolete practices, because the truth here is you've got to focus your activity for long-term success. I tell this to my team all of the time, but short-term problems create opportunities for long-term success. We need to think at a higher horizon as business professionals in the marketing landscape and figure out how we can deliver those results for our business. So as I just told you, we're an organization that focuses on helping businesses communicate. And it all in the past was centered around a central work environment, a copier, a meeting room, people having in-person collaboration. But the truth is that's changed. And you could be cued around the whole pivot and, marketing technology, repositioning strategies. The truth is, you need some clear focused time to rethink the problems that your customers have and start at it at a completely different pace. Things they're doing are different today. The things we're doing as a business are different. And I know the things that you're doing to support your customers are different. So as process and as structured as I am as a battle-tested digital leader, Six Sigma and CDIA plus trained, all that good stuff, I had to get out of the own box that I put myself in and think about how to solve the new problems of our customers. What I would say is marketing, more than anything, has become center stage. We have got to figure out how to support the business in this digital landscape. So there's these obsolete practices. There's this then versus now. The way we work, the way we interact with people, the way we help customer journeys, and also help inspire awareness, consideration, and decision-making in our digital funnels is completely different. Can we talk about text message marketing versus emails? How email is on the rise now that more decision makers are sitting in front of their email, and most of the communication and chatter has been moved to like Slack or Microsoft Teams. There's this complete ripple effect that's happening in how we go to market. And I want you guys to feel passionate to rethink things and get out of the box you've put yourself in. So that brings us to the next part, optimizing for success and business operations. I want to first talk about a couple key things here. This slide's got a few more words on it here, so work with me as we get through it. The first one is we've got to optimize for success. Okay, regardless of the technology, the business, or the processes that you're responsible for managing, you have got to use simple, secure, and affordable software to empower your business workers in this hybrid environment. You've got to relieve the burden of IT with these simple plug-and-play type solutions. And it's your job as a marketing technology expert to find the right things that work for the business so they can manage the implementation for you. And more importantly, you've got to reduce the cost for subscription fees. I'm going to highlight this one right now because a subscription is the easiest thing to get into, but the thing that people forget about the most, and it will drain your budgets very quickly. I'll give you guys an example. Toshiba, we're business users. We edit tons of PDFs. We've had Adobe Power PDF Pro as a business tool that we've always used, which is the Adobe Reader plus some additional features. That costs our business per user, per month, and it's an annual subscription fee. Now, I flip over on my marketing technology side in the portfolio that I manage, and I say, you know what? Our business is here to help communicate things easier, and a desktop PDF editor is exactly what we need for our customers, so I can solve that problem for us and also our customers. We found a similar technology. It's called Kofax Power PDF Pro. And we brought that internally in our tech stack, but we're using it internally and sharing it out to our customers. So it's like what we call here in the States, a 2-for-1, hit two birds with one stone kind of thing. We actually now use and distribute the software, and we solve long-term problems, right, with a short-term issue here today. And then what ended up happening was we cut the burden of these annual subscription fees because it was a one-time perpetual license for the users that go on multiple workstations instead of subscription-based services. So I want you to feel empowered that there are decisions that you can make today to save the business money, but also help them make it. Here's the next one, optimizing for success. It is essential that all of the new marketing technology that you bring into the organization and you champion is implemented in a very easy way. And as you can see here by RedWorks, you've got a source down here below, 50% of all business users completely agree. If you're going to bring in a product and it does not have interoperability with the rest of your internal tech stack or potentially your external tech stack, move on. It's too much work. It's too much of a learning curve, okay? You've got to be able to accept those hard moments as well. Now, MarTech investment priorities in 2021, we look here, according to the CMO Council, 70% of all marketing leaders plan to invest in MarTech. That is right where we want to be. We're investing in MarTech. That's exactly probably what your organizations are doing too. And you can see here the different categories of the most important things that people are investing into. They're investing into analytics, insights, intelligence, campaigns, all those different types of things. But again, similar study, people are asking what is the number one thing that people in MarTech and sales tech would find more useful. If you look at 47% down there, they want everything to be integrated. So full circle experience, you need to make sure interoperability is top of mind for you in order to optimize for success. Now let's talk about how we can support the business go forward, because the most important thing is that you are where your customers need to be. Don't get FOMO, fear of missing out. When you see different channels like Clubhouse or other things come online, it's always hard for us not to go after the shiny object, be the heat seekers that we are because we love technology. But you got to disrupt on the edge of the business and not bring it into the business until you actually have a solid plan attached to that. So what I would say is you need to understand how your buying behaviors have completely changed. Things like hyper-personalization and humanization are on the rise, and you need to fully jump into that. What I mean by that, very bluntly, you in the marketing space need to redefine your value to the organization. Most organizations don't understand what we do. They just want to see metrics and updates. But the truth is, sometimes we overcomplicate it. Where are your customers? What do they need? What problem are you trying to solve? And where is the solution that you can create that awareness and move them down the funnel into a decision-making capability? Let's talk about future-proofing as we go ahead and wrap up my part of today's keynote. And the truth is, don't get left behind. I spend hours upon hours deep diving into strategy, new technology, low code, all of these different types of tools that are given to me as a technology professor. And the truth is, you have got to be able to do that too. A couple things I want you to do some research on, because this is going to hit you like a wave in some very short periods, because you have billions upon billions of advertising dollars across every single sector that is trying to stay alive coming at you in these categories. The first one is personalization. I'm a corporate leader, but I'm talking about my struggles as a corporate leader and what got me here. That attaches you to my brand and creates brand ambassadorship and awareness. And I'll give you an example here in a moment. The next one is tech enhancements. We're in the cloud, we're cloud first, and we're moving to the cloud. So we've got to figure out the business continuity part of it. Relevant individual needs. Right now, I can jump into any one of my personal profiles and I get actionable insights and personalized content for me as a consumer, but I don't get that in the business world. We need to level up in that case and actually drive personalization into the business. But more importantly, and this is definitely a call out for myself, you got to be nimble. So in wrapping up, I would say this. Marketing is going through a process of humanization. You're going to see faces behind some of the fastest growing brands, and they're going to continue to grow. What I highly recommend is that you invoke the power of the employees, because quite truthfully, 565% reach you will gain by having employees reach and share your brand, and you will have 10 times more engagement and followers based off of their push out. 27% of the brand said that employees who actually invest in their brand are more likely to stay in the business. And then 40% of them believe that that's actually part of their competitive advantage. So at Toshiba, I did just that. Inside the business, I disrupted on the edge and am pushing it now outward. As you can see, the power of employee I'm bringing to life with my personal brand, which is something I'm passionate about, because I had to go out and tell who I was and what I believed in. But I didn't know how to do that as a marketing professional for myself, the client. Tons of stats, tons of brand awareness, and I want to flip you guys through what branding applied actually looks like. There's a journey. You've got to determine your vision, your strategy, your story, and then also your tactics. When I launched my brand with Toshiba, I had very clear copy. So Toshiba's given me the best runway that a woman could ask for. I had articles and I broke those down into micro content based upon my story and my journey line, being the CEO of your own brand, women and technology pieces, and all of this got a tremendous amount of visibility for Toshiba and really helped our ad budget actually in terms of lessening it, because now I was getting those impressions for the business. But I was humanizing who I was. So in the takeaways as we wrap up, I would just simply say to you that this year has taught us a lot. More than anything and all the buzzwords, it's that you yourself have to shift and you've got to be on top of your game, regardless of the situation that you are put in. Right here, right now, you are the author of your own book in your personal brand, but also in your corporate brand in what you're doing every single day, because it's your reputation. I've got a freebie for you guys, which is a quick checklist on how to build your personal brand. We'll make sure that you guys have access to it. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for your time. I believe in you. Go out there and disrupt with a little bit of future proof.
Megan, I can't remember the last time we had a presentation with that level of energy in it. Thank you very much for that, Megan Luhan from Toshiba there. Our next speaker is Daniel Winterstein, Chief Technology Officer for Goodloop. And Daniel's looking at the evolution of creative AI, and as Megan referenced there, it's personalizing it. It's actually targeting at individuals. So, Daniel.
Cut that. And I'm going to be joined, adding a bit of class to this talk, by the voice of Dame Judi Dench.
It will be the next biggie in creativity. How can we use it to surprise and delight and not just mimic what humans do, learn more here? The second step will be to create a new type of AI that's better than human at certain tasks. We'll need to figure out how to make this work for us so we can get started on the third step. The third step is the most important step.
This talk is powered by Creative AI. That text that was just read out, that was obviously not Dame Judi. It was a text-to-speech. It was actually a rather simple model someone knocked up in their spare time. The state-of-the-art ones, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And quite excitingly, the text she was reading, that was also written by an AI. That was, I handed this talk to an AI and said, write me an intro blurb. And that's what they came up with. The last few years have seen a series of breakthroughs in what AI can do. And in this talk, I'm going to very quickly cover a realistic look at what AI can do today in advertising. And also touch on how by unlocking smart personalization and dynamic creation, AI could actually make advertising blander than ever before. Finally, how to avoid that. The AI revolution should not be boring. Spoilers, my answer is going to be around identity and purpose and knowing what your brand stands for. All right. Okay. This talk is by myself. My name is Daniel Winterstein. I am the co-founder and chief technology officer of Goodloop. Goodloop is not an AI company itself, but we use AI in the company. Goodloop is, we do advertising that people like, because when you see one of our ads, it's optional as you watch it, but we give you a reason. Pick a charity. Half the money from the ad will go to the charity you pick. That is not what this talk is about. This talk is about the rest of my panel here who will take part in the talk. We have Vocodes, that's the project giving you celebrity voices and dozens of them. Copysmith, which is a state-of-the-art advertising and marketing copy generator, which is going to be doing a lot of the writing for this talk. And just to make it clear who wrote what, Dame Judy is going to read out the AI-generated content, and I will do the human. We have some more AI services here. This meme does not exist. Generated photos, and for developers in the audience, Hugging Face, which provides a wonderful open source treasure trove of AI tools that you can get stuck into and use some of these models. Right, so AI is going to allow us to create on the fly, to personalize. What could possibly go wrong with that? Let's talk about fonts. And here we have, on the left, some brand logos created by craftsmen who hand drew these. And you can see they each have a lot of character and identity. And on the right, you can see the modern version, which each of those brands have switched to, which there's a lot of reasons why this has happened, but they've lost a lot of identity. This is something that's been happening across advertising, across marketing, driven by tooling, driven by market testing, driven by a push towards the mainstream. We're in danger of losing identity, and AI could accelerate that. Again, let's talk about furniture. I'm sure that's why you really tuned in today. On the top, I have a Georgian chair, handcrafted by a craftsman. There's lots of character in that. If you've got a set of Georgian chairs together, unless they came out of the same factory, they wouldn't look the same. On the bottom, we have an IKEA kitchen. It is wonderful that this can be made so cheaply and everyone can have good solid furniture, but by God, that kitchen looks bland. Going to step away from that soapbox for a second to talk a bit about what is AI. It can cover a lot of things, a wealth of sins here, and it means a lot of different things to different people. So some people, when you say AI, they think robots. There are deep learning neural networks. Many of you will have heard of these. They are behind much of the cutting edge AI. A lot of practical AI, though, is often driven by simpler things like flowcharts. And when it comes to optimization, linear regression, the old workhorse dating back to, I think, the 1700s, remains a surprisingly powerful tool for optimizing your processes, and you can apply it at any level. You can apply it from Excel, but there's now increasingly nicely wrapped tools that will do your optimization for you. AI can also mean automation. The kind of things that were done in factories around making cars and radios are now being done in offices around email and flows, sign-up flows. It can sometimes mean people in disguise. More than once, a service that has been presented as AI has actually been powered at the back end by humans. And it can be a buzzword. Sometimes something that says AI is just common or garden software wearing a shiny clothes of the day. With the exception of that last one, all of these things are valuable. They all have their place in our businesses. I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper into deep learning because that's what we're going to look at a bit around content generation and creativity. If you've seen the news in the last year, then you will have heard of GPT-3. This is really the shining star of language generation. For a long time, language generation and language understanding was a hard problem for AIs to crack. They could do a bit, but not that much. It's now just in the last couple of years really opening up. And we're going to see the next few years also, each year will bring fresh progress. GPT-3 is probably certainly the largest and probably the best current AI for understanding text. There are also several others. BERT is the other one that you might come across. BERT was developed by Google, but open sourced, and there are now versions of BERT by dozens of different providers, and it's a very flexible system that you can adapt to your own needs. All of these systems have quite a lot in common around how they're built, which also applies to how you use them. So they were trained from lots of web pages, which is great in terms of the richness of content, also comes with some dangers. And these AIs, they just want to predict the next word. That's the task they were given. Given a string of words, what words are most likely to come next? And to do that well, they have learned about grammar, they have learned about people, they have learned about emotions, they have learned about our worlds. And this is really incredible that this is possible to do through deep learning. And let us see what it can do. So here is an example created by a system called InspiroBot. InspiroBot makes motivational posters. And this is a deep learning text system generating the text and picking a photo to go with it. And this is showing that when you deploy an AI, you will want to do some quality control and some checking and some care about how you deploy it, because they can be quite random at this point. For anyone who's listening on sound only, I will read this out. Childhood is almost identical to being buried alive. You never know what you're going to get. Oh, actually, sorry. Yeah. Let's have another InspiroBot poster. And this one, we will have Dame Judy read it out.
Collapses fast, bubble.
Sorry, Judy.
Wisdom collapses fast, bubble.
Most of our modern AIs are trained off the internet. The internet contains everything from Shakespeare to the writings of teenage boys. It's a melting pot. There is good and bad in there, and you need to be aware of that when you're using an AI, that it can come out with things and learn things that you don't really want it to do. Now, InspiroBot is intentionally uncurated. It was created as an amusing project. Before you think that AI is something that can be dismissed as just a joke, let's have a look at some truly impressive AI. You might think, oh, but AI can never create art. This is just one example of an AI generating animes. This is from a website called This Anime Does Not Exist. And all those pictures you're seeing there, they were uniquely created by a machine. It had been trained on existing AIs, but then it goes off and produces things which are new combinations, novel, never seen. If you look closely at this picture, you will notice that I have cropped it off half the screen. And that was because this AI has one of those problems of being trained off of the internet. It has a fondness for some of its training material contained girls in underwear, and it has a fondness for drawing those as well. So I filtered it. Beware of your training data. Okay, made that point, moving on. We'll take a moment to just look in awe at the quality of the artwork that's going on there. And now let's see another application. These are the faces of the future. Those are not children. Those children do not exist. Those photos are all made up by an AI. This one is called Generated Photos. It's designed with marketing in mind, in that you can go in and say, yep, for this web page or this product, right, okay, I need this kind of model, and can I have this kind of pose? And it will make you a fresh one. That images which they're not going to exist on any other website. You also don't need to worry. In the case of these pictures of children here, if you're using real pictures of children, you have to be very concerned about the privacy of the individual. There are no individuals here. These tools are, as I say, this one is made for marketing, and it has the ability for you to kind of set up photos that have never existed. You can do photoshops from your office computer and produce this. So let me look a bit at what can AI today deliver. Firstly, we can optimize things. Things like media buying can be optimized. Well, for each of these points, I asked Copysmith to write me an AI gloss of what to say. So let's hear what the AI says about this.
Artificial intelligence in media buying allows to optimize media booting process and therefore to increase I've learned how to leverage the power of AI with our new ebook.
We have in chatbots, if you want to use AI today, your chatbots are going to be simple flowcharts. You'll sketch out a flowchart, and that's basically going to be what you create. In the pipeline is some truly revolutionary language conversation handling AI. But if you're looking at what you want to do in 2021, this is what's operational.
Chatbots can be difficult to create since they require a complex knowledge of coding. Luckily, there are resources that can help you build a simple chatbot in a short amount of time.
As before, AI today can create dangerously quirky creative work.
For example, advertising a moisturizing soap dove with the slogan, "You've got skin like bees."
Having said that, whilst "You've got skin like bees" is not a slogan I see Dove using anytime soon, with a bit of curation and care, it's quite easy to avoid that problem. And I actually had to prod Copysmith quite a bit to get it to write me something that was off beam like that. We can do automation. If you have boring processes, look at automating them.
Automation isn't just about eliminating jobs. It's about improving your company's efficiency.
And that's roughly it for where we are today. But tomorrow, this technology is getting better year on year. Tomorrow, within the next 5 years, it's hard to say where the limits are. Certainly within the next 10 years, I'm not sure if there are limits.
Today, AI is powerful but limited, but tomorrow, anything is possible. See how AI platform brings your company's data into focus and answers your biggest questions. AI is transforming business, but only if you have the right data.
I'll stress again, that bit of text there, all the AI was fed was the slides that you are seeing here. So it didn't have much to work on, and it wrote perfectly credible copy there. Which leads us back to how these amazing revolutionary tools could create something bland, uniquely, personally bland. Copying is easy. Tweaking is easy. Emulating is easy. AIs are great at doing this. So where we had the creation of boring text, AIs can do that. And certainly for people who are in the SEO business, we'll be looking at these new tools and seeing them as game changers. People who were copywriters for hire in the SEO business are going to be in trouble quite soon. Got a point here about safety first. We've seen a couple of examples in this of how AIs can be quirky and produce random things. But actually, AIs in production are often focused on not doing that. So, and certainly AIs are trained to try and be mediocre. We are actively aiming. Success in AI is producing something which is mainstream, cannot be distinguished from a normal human, a bland human response. And that's going to be amplified when people start looking at deploying AI in brand safe spaces. There'll be this push for bland because it's safe. Unfortunately, that can mean a loss of identity. Similar note, we are optimizing towards mediocre because it is easier to find a mainstream, what's called a local optima, a patch where things perform quite well than to find the isolated peaks of something that's novel and new yet works. And the final point is, just because we have these tools which can create and personalize doesn't mean that they are always giving value. Personalization often isn't actually that personal. If it isn't coupled with identity, it delivers the now eminently ignorable dear first name emails that we are all very familiar with. So how can we avoid this blandness, this machine generated, but all the unique, but all the same? Well, if you approach AI not as a let's deploy AI and save money, but as AI is a tool which can let us achieve something. What is it that we're going to achieve? And you put purpose and identity into the heart of what you're doing, then when AI is used purposeful by design, this can deliver real results. These computer systems, they have an understanding of emotion, but they are not emotional themselves. GPT-3 doesn't care about anything. Your systems that use it, they won't care unless you design them to. So build that in, start with why am I doing this? And then that must inform the whole of the project, the tools that are used, how AI and humans interact, because we'll be seeing a lot of handovers where AIs maybe streamline things for people or people curate things from AI. The AI will become a colleague, not a replacement. And also a point, every AI project should have an ethics plan. If you roll out an AI without thinking about what you're doing and what can go wrong, then it is all too easy to have unintended consequences, like systems which are sexist, systems that are racist. Just start of this year, there was a chatbot in Korea that had to be shut down because it became homophobic. So do think about ethics. Again, that goes alongside purpose. That should come early on in the project and inform it throughout. Now, let me see what the AI has to say on the subject of purpose.
Design is a way to communicate your values to your audience. In order to do that, you have to really know who your audience is and what they care about. You have to know what makes them laugh, what makes them cry. Brand purpose is the single most important way to drive the identity of your brand. The best brands are the ones that aren't just trying to win customers, but that are also trying to make the world a better place. Our projects should be purposeful by design. One of the most important things to remember about projects that involve AI is that they should be inherently useful and help you achieve something that you couldn't otherwise achieve without them.
Thank you, Dame Judy and Copysmith there. I repeat, all the text read there was created automatically from just this slide content with only very slight picking from me to curate the better content. And thank you very much for your time. I hope this has been interesting. We'll be sharing these slides with links to some of the tools used here. And a final word from a different tool. This meme does not exist. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Interesting, yes. Also extremely alarming. Andrew Girdwood, Daniel, wants to know, how do we know that you're not an AI? It's a good question. We'll come back to that later. There is an opportunity to ask questions of all these three speakers at the end of this session. So if you've got anything you would like to ask, just stick it in the question section down at the bottom of your screen. Now, our third speaker here is Benjamin Bloom, Senior Director Analyst for Gartner. What are likely to be the key strategy choices for MarTech in the face of what is quite probably going to be almost inevitable budgetary pressures? So, Benjamin, over to you.
Terrific. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. And let's see if I can get this to work here. So I'm here to share a few pieces of information and data from our marketing technology survey and some of the insights that we have from studying the marketing technology strategies of Genius Brands. And we'll get into that towards the end. So a bit about me. I've been in my career on the brand side, on the agency side, and on the vendor side. And I like to think I have a little bit of sympathy for everybody in that context. But I talk to CMOs and digital marketing leaders about their digital transformation strategies, about the portfolio of marketing technologies that they have. And I also talk to them about how to get value out of those technologies. And when you think about the challenges that a lot of CMOs bring to those kinds of discussions, sometimes there's a focus on the technology as opposed to how it's actually going to deliver value. Are they getting the best technology? And I sometimes think about this as a question about whether you're buying the most powerful machine or the most powerful car. And let's take one example of a very powerful machine. So this is the Shelby Cobra Daytona Coupe. So a very exciting race car pictured here in 1964 at one of the most grueling endurance races in the world, the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And one of the notable things about this car is that despite its power and capability, it did not win the race. When you think of the story of Carroll Shelby and his Shelby Racing team and its partnership with Ford, it took several tries. And if you think about what happened in 1966 when they actually achieved victory, there were a number of customizations that led to a substantial improvement in their ability to win and endure the entire race to actually finish it, including innovations like a quick change brake system invented by engineer Phil Remington and in partnership with the driver Ken Miles. And so the utilization of marketing technology is somewhat similar. That are you tuning the entire marketing technology capability that you have in conjunction with the people who are actually using it? And so when you think about your digital transformation, is your transformation about the car or is it about the driver? So today, we'll talk about some of the strategic choices that marketing technology teams face in the wake of substantial budget pressure, what utilization means and how to improve it, and what best-in-class brands are doing to improve the effectiveness of their marketing technology and separating themselves from the competition. So a little bit about those strategic choices are informed by our 2020 Marketing Technology Survey. And this survey was fielded during the mid to late summer of 2020, giving us a pretty decent picture for what actually was transpiring from the perspective of the respondents in our survey, which came from both North America and Western Europe. And those teams that responded from Western Europe, 67% of them, so more than 2/3, said that they faced a moderate to severe cut to their marketing technology budget. And this is actually alarming not only in its magnitude, but also sometimes in its severity. So the 22% who said that they faced a severe cut of more than 15% to their budget compared to their 2020 plan, that's 3 times as many as we found in our survey average. So the cuts were somewhat more severe. And also there were a smaller share, just 18%, who said that they had an increase in their marketing technology budget, which is a little bit lower than our survey average. And this conversation that we had with CMOs and other marketing technology teams really revealed that there was almost a haves and have-nots, or a real bifurcation in terms of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on marketing technology spend. You got the parallel stories that unfolded between those teams that had a cut to their marketing technology budget, forcing them to scrape and find any ounce of value that they could find from their constrained budgetary resources. At the same time, There were also teams that had a completely different experience, where they were really in a position to be able to invest in growth, to be able to drive the change that the new business environment required to unlock new markets or address customer acquisition instead of just retention. And either way, the challenge of marketing technology utilization remains. And here's how that looked from the perspective of those who faced a challenge to their marketing technology resources. More than 3/4 of the teams that had a cut to their marketing technology budget still say that they struggle with marketing technology utilization. But even if you look at the teams that had an increase in their budget, many of them still struggle as well. And so this challenge is pervasive in terms of the ability to put marketing technology to use, but it's clearly harder to dig yourself out of that budgetary crunch and to be able to drive effectiveness of your marketing technology if you aren't able to expand your resources at all. By contrast, those teams that had an increase in their marketing technology budget put it to use in things like doing a full overhaul of their marketing technology capabilities, or putting their marketing technology in service of a wider level of digital transformation. So they were much more likely to take those kinds of actions that would be accelerating the transformation of their organization and its capabilities. This is not surprising. One of our other surveys, the Gartner 2021 View from the Board of Directors survey, found that 7 in 10 members of boards of directors said that their organization had accelerated digital transformation initiatives in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. And what I think this is driving is a real change in terms of who's buying marketing technology. And here's how we saw that show up in our survey. We saw that after years where our survey had revealed an increasing preference for a sort of best of breed approach to selecting marketing technology, where you select an individual vendor for individual capabilities rather than that integrated suite approach, looking at a larger vendor offering a more horizontally sprawling offering and buying multiple modules from that same vendor. In 2020, there was a 30 percentage point increase into the preference for an integrated suite. So 59% of the respondents to our 2020 survey said that they preferred that integrated suite approach, which I think represents both the emergent nature of the COVID-19 pandemic, where organizations were all of a sudden looking for sales and service and commerce and marketing products all at the same time. And they weren't necessarily able to generate 7 new concurrent RFPs to be able to source those things from different vendors. They needed something that was a little bit more centralized. And then I think you have that top-down view from the board of directors, where instead of looking at just what is the CMO trying to push and trying to win some support from the CEO or other organizational leaders, this has become not just the marketing problem, but an everyone problem. And so now that's leading to a somewhat greater preference for that integrated suite approach. That being said, our research shows that those respondents who say that they prefer that best of breed approach were somewhat more likely to say that their marketing technology stack meets or exceeds their business objectives. So the question that I think we'll have is, when might this snap back to a preference for best of breed? When will some of those emergent challenges subside? Either way, you'll still potentially struggle with putting that technology to work. And that's, I think, the job that we need to look at in terms of how to improve the utilization of marketing technology and looking at what leaders are actually getting right. Now, when we ask what marketing technology teams utilize in terms of their stack, they say that they utilize just 58% of the capabilities overall that they have licensed. And if you're a glass half empty or a glass half full type of person, you might say, great, but it's more than half. That's certainly progress, let's say. But if you're the CFO, perhaps you're looking at that 42% and saying, can we get some of those resources back? Because we're still paying for those, aren't we? And I think that's a risky proposition for any marketing executive. At the same time, when we look at what's getting in the way, is it not having enough technology? Is it not having the right vendors? Those are not the challenges that marketing technology leaders are telling us about. They're saying that their top challenges are around cross-functional collaboration, around the sprawl or complexity of the marketing technology stack. They're saying that they don't have enough training or the right talent. And that suggests that this is much more of a people problem than it is a technology problem. And so the more that you look to improve the effectiveness of your marketing technology, particularly if you're trying to make the best of the existing technology that you have, you should be looking at your teams and your talent, as well as maybe right-sizing or getting or pruning some marketing technologies from your stack. And in order to frame this challenge, I think marketing teams need to embrace this idea of a relationship between utilization and effectiveness. And this is a correlation that we've seen in our data year over year. There's virtually no correlation between how much you spend on MarTech and how effective it is. However, we do see a repeated correlation between how much of your stack you use and how effective it is. Teams that say their MarTech stack is effective utilize more, 59% of their stack, compared with those teams that say their MarTech stack is not effective. They use just 47% of their total capabilities. So from the perspective of where you're going to get value, it's absolutely going to be about trying to enable teams within your organization to utilize more of the capabilities that you've already licensed. And what steps were teams taking in order to advance that marketing technology capability? Well, utilization is clearly going to something that relies on processes and people. MarTech teams said that their top action that they were taking in order to improve MarTech utilization was to build new processes or team capabilities, or perhaps they were looking at expanding into some new use cases. But I think if you look at the challenge of finding new talent, this clearly comes into conflict, where do you have the right people is going to be clearly linked to are you able to build the right kinds of processes to bring marketing technology workflows onto the portfolio of technologies that you've actually got. So if we think of one area as maybe that we need to expand some of the way that we use marketing technology, the other question is, who's going to do that? Is it going to be marketing? Is it going to be IT? And we've tracked for the last couple of years a range of different marketing technology activities. And on the left side of this chart would be the specific roles and responsibilities for different marketing technology functions, ranging from setting the marketing technology budget or defining the marketing technology roadmap to more technical activities like configuration and integration. And what we're finding is that the majority of organizations are kind of in the middle, in that collaboration zone, where either marketing is in a leadership position with IT and support, or IT is in a leadership position with marketing and support. And you can see that for the more technical activities, IT is somewhat more likely to be in a leadership position, whereas for more business-focused activities, marketing is somewhat more likely to be in that leader role or handling it all by itself. But what also showed up was the increased role of external service providers. So between 2019 and 2020, we saw an increase in the role of consultants, systems integrators, and other external providers, as well as IT in the actions of marketing technology. As this has become an everybody problem, it's also become wherever I can get the resources, I'm going to take advantage of those. And sometimes that could be outside of marketing or outside of IT, and you need to look for partners wherever you can find them. So thinking about how we're going to find the lessons to move forward, let's look at a few different perspectives and kind of who's getting it right. One thing that we find is organizations that are more frequently auditing the capabilities in their marketing technology stack are much more likely to say that they do not struggle with marketing technology utilization. So before you buy new technology, look at what you already have. And that's going to be one of the keys to being able to deliver progressive progress in marketing technology, is to constantly either cull the solutions that are no longer in use or no longer performing, as well as trying to figure out what you already have before you try to buy something new. The other indication is having a marketing technology roadmap is something that 44% of organizations don't really do. And so if you want to be part of the set of organizations that are moving forward, you need to think about making a plan that actually not only reflects the portfolio of technologies that you have, or maybe some of the technologies that you seek to acquire, but also look at the different technologies that you plan to utilize and figure out a way to align the capabilities and processes that you need to the technologies that will deliver them. Now, we looked at a different set of kind of road mapping styles, whereas with a formalized roadmap being something where things are pretty rigid and defined and there's a progressive plan, to about 10% of teams that said that they took an agile planning approach, meaning that they were more iterative and a little bit better able to pivot. And that became a clear advantage in the wake of the disruption of the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic. Agile planners were able to just get more done. They were much more likely to have integrated new marketing technology, to have acquired new technology, to have expanded new use cases, and run proofs of concept with MarTech vendors to be able to establish that there was actual business value being delivered. And so from the perspective of where agile planners are much better able to deal with change, I think we can all agree that there's likely to be more change in the future rather than less. And so those teams taking an agile approach will face a substantial advantage. So figuring out a way to incorporate some of those agile-focused activities is going to be something that drives tremendous impact potentially for your organization. And we also find that those agile planning approaches require you to understand and overcome bottlenecks to utilization. Those teams with an agile planning approach were much less likely to struggle with MarTech utilization compared to those teams that had an ad hoc or best effort or even a formal roadmap. And so even as you decide what things you want to acquire or the plan that you want to put into place, you also need to be thinking about what are the issues that you will overcome in terms of utilization as you drive towards marketing technology maturity. So a somewhat different perspective in this context comes from Gartner's digital performance benchmarking data set, where we look at digital performance across 4 dimensions of site, digital marketing channels, social media, and conversion or path to purchase. And then we've also added in the marketing technology stack data. So what technologies Genius brands are actually using. And we benchmark brands on these 4 dimensions and allow us to come up with a score that's comprised of over 1,200 data points and indexed somewhat like an IQ score. And what's so fascinating about these high-performing brands is that we can start to see what are the things that separate them from the rest of the pack. So Genius brands like Home Depot, LG, Ralph Lauren do certain different things. One interesting thing is that they're only a minority of these brands, about 18% of them, successfully leverage technology to drive better impact. So in this chart, you see on the horizontal axis, that's the number of MarTech products that brands have adopted. And on the vertical axis, their digital IQ score, which ranges from 30 to 170. And you can see that in the lower left, those are immature marketing technology stacks. About 52% of brands are in that quadrant. In the lower right, that's sort of the MarTech sprawl quadrant, where you've adopted marketing technology products, but they haven't yet delivered business value, which is the substantial risk to the CMO's credibility. And in the upper right, we have what Genius brands are doing that are actually the ones that we want to emulate, because they've been able to overcome that kind of complexity and enable their technologies to work together. And I would highlight that we looked at their stacks to try to figure out what kinds of technologies did they actually have. And what we find is that Genius brands don't look at it as just best of breed or integrated suite. Genius brands were much more likely to take more of a yes to both approach. And they fill their stacks not only with the large MarTech vendors like Oracle, Adobe, Salesforce, et cetera, those brands that sell multiple products, but they also, 3/4 of their stack on average are comprised of point solutions. So vendors that sell just one product. And so combining products into complementary situations is absolutely key to delivering Genius level performance. What are the technologies in specific that they have? We also found that they were more likely to adopt mobile marketing platforms, some of the content-focused technologies like content marketing or digital asset management. But we also found that they were much more likely to have invested in analytics, BI, and data science tools. And the analogy that I bring here is that these Genius brands are bringing together their teams and their technology in complementary ways so that their stack works together. And where these tools generate vast amounts of data, the Genius brands are making sense of it. Where we might just look up into the sky and see stars, genius brands see constellations. They see order in the chaos, and they bring those insights into the customer journey to be able to drive that genius brand impact. So a few recommendations to wrap up here. Ensure that you're doing regular audits of your marketing technology stack in order to deliver some insight into what tools you're using that are actually performing. Figure out how to balance that best of breed against that integrated suite impetus so that you're able to find the right tools for you and enable your tools to work together. Increase the volume on collaboration. This is a really key point that you need to think about in terms of overcoming those challenges to utilization. Your people need to be working together to design new processes. And I think adopting an agile approach is something that we've also seen to be tremendously important, where even if you're just thinking about this as running some proofs of concept or trying to explore a few new use cases, I think that agile approach is something that we see as driving the resilience to deal with the coming change. I'm so grateful for the chance to share these with you all. Thanks so much, Pete, for having me.
Benjamin, thank you very much too. Some very interesting material in that. Right, we've got a chance now to ask questions of our last three speakers. So if we'll bring them back up again, please. And I'm going to start off with a slightly generic question. It reminds me, of the old sort of software gag that rubbish it, rubbish out. The question actually comes saying, if data is the foundation of AI, are companies doing enough to gather the high quality data needed to develop AI solutions? I'm going to put that to you first, Dan.
So to me first, or
you first? Yep.
Okay.
Trying to duck it. I quite clearly said your name.
Sorry. The yes and no. Companies have certainly got a lot smarter about data and understanding that it's something valuable, something that they should be looking at collecting and using. But most companies, I used to work as an AI consultant before Goodloop and worked with a lot of companies. It's quite hard to actually join the dots on data collection through processing and analysis and back into operations and delivering benefits. So I think we're still seeing a lot of catch up and a lot of room for improvement. That's around things like using AI to optimize your processes to make your company tick more efficiently. If you're looking at things like some of the tools I was showing off today, the generator tools, the wonderful thing about these is they are being trained on generic data sets and then applied to specific problems. Text generation is a bit behind image generation here. Image generation, we have really specialized, really high quality image analysis and image generators. If you strip back a couple of layers underneath that, you'll find that there are some very expensive to create models trained on big banks of image data, which are general purpose models. And these are made available for anyone to use, and then people take them and customize them to the problem they want to look at. So in order to get an AI to see, you first chain it to see the world, and then you focus it on your problem. And this is also something we're starting to see in text generation, but text generation is a few years behind. But the good news about this is it means those building blocks are being created by the community for all of us to use.
This is not, Megan, this is not my area of expertise at all. And I confess to being slightly mystified. Why did I choose to use AI rather than a talented and creative human being?
I strongly feel it's about the business case of what you would do with that AI. If you look to future-proof, skill sets, think back to, the evolution of technology. And when we went into the fourth industrial revolution, we moved from doing a lot of things in a manual way to, in the last recession, learning how to do things better with technology. And there was a disruption in the workforce, quite frankly. There were people who needed to be upskilled into different, areas, and they needed to work more on their soft skills. So what I would say is, you will see AI come into a business and into your everyday, consumer life, and it will apply technology enablement to the things that we shouldn't really be doing as a human. So I would almost argue that AI is really meant to allow for us to be free from mundane manual tasks that really just suck the life out of humans, so that we could be liberated to be creative and apply the emotional aspect in which AI will have a bit of time to catch up to. So what I would say is, as a citizen of data and the aggregation of data, it's really about what you choose to focus your time and energy on. And AI lives in a very complex part of the business. Turning data into actionable insights happens before you get to AI. So that would be my answer there.
Lots of people would be very happy just to sit at manual jobs. One of the best jobs I ever had was collecting rubbish, for example.
Well, I don't know that AI could necessarily collect it directly. There's going to be a human body behind it who's been trained to be able to code the AI and prepare it to go out and collect the rubbish, so to speak. So that person perhaps can do it on a video screen and QA it like our air traffic control people do, instead of getting their hands in the trash.
Benjamin?
Or hopefully there will still be space for us to get out and do those jobs, even if robots can also do them.
Yeah.
Benjamin, for the third time.
Well, from a marketing technology standpoint, AI is sort of pervasive. I mean, if you look at most of the marketing technology solutions that are out there, they have some some AI capability that's already built in. And I think the question is now, what is the, to Daniel and Megan have both sort of highlighted, what's the emotional why of this? What's in it for your customer? Right. If you're not able to identify that, and this is something that I think has led to a substantial investment across the business in marketing technology, where our CMO spend survey suggests that the marketing organization is spending 26% of its budget on average on technology. It's one of the largest line items for the CMO. And so if you don't have a clear kind of governing reason of why you actually need this particular feature, do you really need infinite one-to-one personalization at scale? Maybe that's not actually delivering value for your customers. So we think about personalization from the perspective of what we call tailored help. So is it actually something that helps your customer to buy more effectively, or are you just changing the color of the button and a call to action? I would argue that the latter is not really meaningful enough to deliver value from a marketing technology standpoint.
Not actually having a justifiable reason for doing it is not going to stop them. I'm reminded a couple of years ago of companies saying, how do we get some of this big data stuff? It's fashionable. People think, oh, that company's doing it, we better do it.
Well, I think there's a real question about what's your risk tolerance and what's your budgetary tolerance for chasing that single view of the customer, that 360-degree view, which is complex and costly. And if you're basing all of your requirements for delivering that personalization on having the ability to surveil your customers infinitely and forever, do you really need that? Is that really, you'll pay the price when your competitors steal your customers when you're not delivering enough value for them.
Is there a trust issue here, Megan? Because I would have thought trust is getting increasingly important. Authenticity is part and parcel of trust. If I'm not sure what exactly I'm dealing with as a customer, that's going to undermine that trust.
I think there's this level of awareness that hasn't quite hit the average consumer yet, because and it's evident in every single app that's downloaded on people's home screens or devices. You are hitting EULAs, end user license agreements, and click-through agreements at speeds that you and I both know you are not reading. Okay, the stuff of think about Pokemon Go. I mean, fantastic evolution of virtual reality that hit the scales here in the U.S. And in matters of minutes, you've got people just cycling around parks trying to get this picture of this, Pokemon. But the truth is, there was a EULA that allowed for your exact geographical location to be pinpointed, and it allowed for that data to be sold and leveraged across multiple different accounts, and people are harvesting your data. So I think that there is this realization that you yourself are responsible for your data footprint, what you put out there, not just in terms of your clicks, but your dwell time and your impressions that you give when you're on camera, that all turns into actionable insights. So I think there's this awareness that needs to come from the consumer, but then there's also a reality check that needs to come from the company. You are collapsing underneath a ridiculous amount of big data and you don't even know what to do with it. You're just collecting insights. They're not even actionable insights. So I would say I, as a consumer, have concerns when I hit EULAs and see that you want access to everything in my Google accounts, because quite frankly, that's my life. And I don't know what you're doing with that data. I'll give you a clear example. We are all seeing marketing systems come online overnight. So an email, I'll get an email from a brand that I hadn't even worked with for many, many years, even a hairstylist that I hadn't gone to in over a decade. They're going from paper to digital, and they're activating digital systems, and your data is getting sprayed across everywhere. Old email addresses, wrong data attributes around you, and it's all going online. So you got to own it and manage it, because then you'll trust what's put into the world. And then I think from there you're liberated. Like, I absolutely love going onto Amazon and having Whole Foods tell me what my shopping order should be. I'm not walking and going back to an old shopping environment of figuring out where the appropriate balsamic vinegar is to do my recipe. Like, I want AI to help me there. So I think there's this conscious and kind of citizen management that we need to bring in, and a realization on the business side to say, stop collecting data you're not doing anything with.
Daniel, what impact has COVID had over the last 11 months? I mean, I'm asking this question because, you know, I have a badge that says old fart. I'm 50 years old. I am not naturally, I don't navigate naturally towards technology. So, you know, in the 12 months ago, it would come up and say, you know, do you want to sign up for this? And I would go, no. And I would switch away from the site. Now, I'm just in such a hurry. I go, yeah, whatever. People, is that become a habit?
The just signing up that you referred to and Megan was talking about, yeah, that's a habit. It was there before. It's getting worse. Fortunately, we have some legal protections here in the UK and in Europe, and they're also in California. I'd like to see more of that, of industry and countries taking leadership on. People just want to get on with their lives. So let's create a framework in which they can do that without just shipping out their personal photos and their life to all and sundry. The effect of COVID, yeah, more digital. We're going to see, I mean, deep fakes are a problem that's going to become something quite live, I think, in upcoming elections. And the increasing use of non-face-to-face, of digitally mediated communication, means that there's more potential for those things. But there was plenty of potential beforehand.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I look at it from a journalist standpoint. There are quite a few politicians about, particularly, I think, will be delighted with the rise of deep fakes, because they'll be able to turn around and say something that actually happened is actually a deep fake. You know, effectively, it's a double bluff. Benjamin,
yeah.
Does this come into your calculations at all? Is it something that you worry about?
Well, it absolutely is. And on our 2020 hype cycle for digital marketing, one of the new entrants on our hype cycle this year on the innovation trigger side is customer data ethics. Yeah. And so I think we are increasingly seeing the idea that you have to align the way that you use data with what the kind of moral and ethical dimensions are of running your business. And so the more you try to achieve some kind of business impact with any marketing technology, whether it's got kind of AI and machine learning in it or not, you still need to be grappling with these questions of how much data are you collecting, how much of the technology that you are acquiring depends on data that you have maybe a questionable right to use. And so I think that's going to impact the way that brands design their advertising strategies, the way that they look at their, let's say, their prospects or unknown not yet customers as audiences somewhat differently from what they're able to achieve and know with customers where they do have an established relationship.
Is there another issue here too, though, Megan, with the fact that, you know, much as we might like to regulate some of this stuff, global regulation does not and cannot exist?
Say, you muffled out on the last one. Global regulation what?
I was saying global regulation does not and cannot exist, across international boundaries.
It's going to try, and I think that we need to get to that point. I would say, as a business technology leader, every time I launch a new software portfolio, I've got to go through a rigorous go-to-market strategy, and part of that is data compliance. It's GDPR, it's HIPAA, it's all these different things that are layering on top of you. And as a business owner of my space, I've got to be prepared for that and implement the appropriate processes to safeguard that information. So at some point, we're going to need to get to a common understanding and a common vision for where we're going as a society in that space.
But when you do that, are you complying just in America, or are you complying in America and the Far East and Europe, and are they all different types of compliance?
It depends on where the customer base is. Toshiba, we're an international company, so my readiness categories include operational readiness and data protection for any international OpCo, operating company, or customer that may touch our software solutions. Keeping in mind that we distribute third-party software, so I'm constantly implementing GDPR requirements and all different types of, paper to digital compliance based upon industries and sectors, and they're different geographically. So I would say your compliance is based upon where your customer is and where the data is going to live and reside. And you need to ensure encryption end to end, and that you have integrity in that entire path through.
But say you did something bad, I'm not saying you do deliberately, but you say you did something bad. Who is going to chase you down? Would it be the American authorities? If it happened in Japan, it would be the Japanese. If it would be, if it's somewhere in Australia, the Australians could come after you. The point I'm making is there isn't something that's overarching. No one has the authority anywhere in the world to say, no, that's wrong.
Yeah, it generally is going to happen on the customer side and wherever the customer is at, but it all ties down to the documentation around the EULAs and the software service terms, and then what the governing principles are of the agreement. I think it's multifaceted in that case, and you're right, it is a problem for a lot of people. If there was a data privacy breach, we all just get notes, like it's kind of the normal thing. Oh, the credit card information's been compromised. So as a consumer, here I get a year of identity theft. Is that enough? Does that really protect me? I mean, my information for future issues are, it's mitigated a little bit, but my data is out there. That's my life, my videos, my pictures, all of my passwords, my bank account information. Like, there's bigger concerns. And I don't think that maybe companies are addressing it at the level that they should. And it's become kind of an average thing for data issues to be leaked.
I'm not trivializing this at all. I just have a mental image of Russian gangsters slumped over the table, dead with boredom if they got mine. But Daniel, any thoughts on this?
On data protection and regulation, I think regulation is hard, but it's the only approach. The idea that we put this on users, it's a fantasy that users are going to read these end user license agreements and they're going to check every consent thing they check. So I think we need to bring in regulation and also software and industry solving this. So Firefox and Safari have been very good about building protections into their browsers. So if you use those products, they now have some protection for you built in. So that sort of industry leadership combined with regulation, and it's got to be iterative. The GDPR is not perfect, but it is a lot better than nothing. It goes a long way to protecting us. It's a first iteration, so let's build on it. Let's keep doing it. And in terms of whether you can regulate internationally, I think that's one of the interesting things about the GDPR was Europe said, you know what, these software companies might be based anywhere in the world, but if they are doing business with our citizens, then we can regulate them.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. There's a fascinating question here from Nushawan Aziz from the University of Edinburgh Business School. I suspect Nushawan reads far too much science fiction. I just love this. It's wonderful. What are the potential implications? And I'm going to put this to you, Benjamin, so be warned. What are the potential implications of generating faces as models in terms of future likeness similarities to individuals who may in the future look similar to those faces? Now, you win a watch if you follow that question in the first place.
Wow. One of the concepts that we have talked about is this idea of the uncanny cliff, where there's this kind of notion in kind of facial recognition of the uncanny valley, where there's a point at which the image is too similar, it looks too realistic, and that actually can alienate the customer. And I think what we're seeing is sort of similar in terms of personalization, where something can get too detailed, too intimate. And so I think there are obviously some issues with, I don't know, let's say that you're using computer generated stock photography to market your product, and all of a sudden someone says, wait a minute, did you just like steal the photo right off my iPhone? And so I think that definitely should raise some questions with brands about what kinds of creative licenses and what kinds of standards do you want to have in your marketing execution. And we're increasingly seeing in tools like digital asset management tools or content marketing platforms that there's a lot of that AI, machine vision technology inside of the tool. And hopefully that can be put to good use in terms of helping to properly govern the assets that your marketing team may be using and try to get feedback into what seems to be performing and maybe what's not performing so well.
Well, to put it another way, Megan, there is a fine line between targeted marketing and being downright creepy.
Yeah, you're right on that one. As Benjamin was talking about that, I was thinking back to one of the first faux pas that we had here in the States by a large retailer over here. And they had known that a woman was pregnant before she was, based upon her buying behaviors, right? Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden, and I almost want to say it was a daughter or somebody affiliated to the family, and the dad's thinking that that the wife is pregnant, but it's actually the daughter, because now they're getting ads related to prenatal things based upon the buying behaviors that had happened in the family based off the credit card. So you look at the potential and the eagerness of all of that data, and you realize maybe we jumped the gun a little too quick here, and we should let the consumers determine what they need and search for, and then feed them what they want.
Yeah, I think that has sent a shiver up the spine of farmers all around the world, to be honest.
I think what Benjamin and Megan have said, these are tools which we should be looking. So AI has some of the potential to build safety tools as well as create the dangers. Yeah. That's something that we need to look at developing. And we need to be thinking about, just because we can, is this actually going to, what are the risks, and is this actually adding value for our customers?
Sadly, it's almost an article of faith that if we can, somebody will. Right. It's been a fascinating discussion, and thank all three of you for your time and your presentations this afternoon. Really entertaining. Thank you. That was Megan Luhan, Daniel Winterstein, and Benjamin Bloom. So I'd like to thank all of our speakers today, and thank you also to our conference partners, exhibitors, and sponsors. I should point out that the exhibition zone will remain open, albeit virtually, until 4:30. If you haven't had the chance already, please visit the exhibition zone and meet the sponsors. There is also the possibility of taking part in the prizes, winning some prizes, taking part in the competitions. Digit, the organisers of this virtual conference, also organise a conference survey. It is not terribly onerous by any manner of means, but it is quite useful for us. It just allows us to target and to refine what it is we do. Give us your feedback for a chance to win one of two £50 vouchers. You can open your briefcase now to find the survey. On-demand content of today's sessions will be available shortly and for the next 7 days. I'm just going to flag up now Digit's next virtual conferences, which are Scott Secure, cyber security event, that's on the 24th and the 25th of March, and the Digital Energy Summit 2021 on Thursday, the 22nd of April. Registration is now open for these conferences, and you can secure a place to either of those, or indeed both, by visiting the Digit booth in the exhibition hall. Thank you for taking the time to attend today's conference. I hope you found it useful. Any feedback you have, please put it on the conference survey form. We'd be delighted to hear from you. I'm Mark Stephen, and just thank you for your attention.